Hi, everyone. So excited to be here today. Got a wonderful panel that's been here many times before, and we're very seasoned, and we're ready to hit the ground running. We've got Charles Caldwell, Catherine Chadwick, and Dave Snell with us. The word of the day is reinvention. We really appreciate comments, even if it's just sharing who you are and where you're from, because it helps us become more relevant and direct our conversation to something that hopefully you can use and build on. So to launch, let's go with Charles.
Welcome, everybody. I'm calling in from Hong Kong. It's great to see everybody again. And I'm excited about this conversation because I think reinvention is so important for us. It's more important to focus on the future than to focus on the past. Although I tend to be a very, very sentimental individual, and it's very easy for me to get too fixated on the past and not fixated enough on the future. But yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited about our conversation.
Well, thank you. Glad to have you. Well, let's actually go with Dave because, well, we're going to circle this way or that way. Uh, which
Either
is,
way, I'm happy to cede to Catherine on this one, but your call.
um, let's go with Catherine. I think I can go clockwise.
It's always good to have a direction, right?
Yeah, keep in mind.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Oh my gosh. And reinvention is so interesting because what came to mind was being present and being self aware as to what you need to reinvent to, right? Because if we don't have any self awareness, if we don't have any input coming in, if we're not adaptable, then reinvention kind of falls by the wayside and we get left behind.
Yeah, so true. Dave?
Yeah, great start here. Thank you, Catherine and Charles and Don. Great to be back. As always, when I first saw the word, the first thing that crossed my mind was going back almost 2 years ago when Don and I started. We had Debbie Clement on, and she talks about caterpillars and metamorphosis was the word of the day that day. And that conversation has stuck with me for almost 2 years now.
Hmm.
And I think of reinvention, I think of metamorphosis because we're always in a change. We're always adapting to our environment as we move to new cities, as we integrate with new organizations, as we integrate with new friends and neighbors. We're always reinventing ourselves. There's some sort of change, metamorphosis going on that will drive how we adapt to our environment around us.
Yeah, great point, Dave. Points. And want to welcome Omar. Omar's taking the first opportunity to be the first commenter. So Omar wins a condo in Florida. So thank you so much, Omar. And me and Omar had a wonderful get together out in Denver just a couple weeks ago. And from that, uh, created more video, more content, more connection. And when we're talking about reinvention, it's not singular. It's not waking up every day and say, how do I reinvent myself? How do I allow myself to be reinvented? And the point I'm making is Omar now, I could see, has Jason Gerardo coming on as a guest, has Sarah Dawkins coming on as a guest. And what that means, it's cross pollination, right? So we're not just linear, and guests here become guests there who then become have visibility. So it's really the choices that you make, that you surround yourself with, which could be your own environment, but it could be other environments that you join into and allow yourself to be reinvented by other influences. We've got another wonderful commenter here, Tracy J. Chow. The reinvention of daily life means marching off the edge of our maps. So true. Bob Black. Uh, and the map expands and changes. It's not static or stagnant. Anyways, I'm excited. Let's move that excitement over to Charles.
Yeah, thank you very much, Don. And we should actually tell people that we're doing something a little bit different today. and using this AI to read our conversation. And we'll do a big share at the end of the LinkedIn Live to let people know what the AI thinks of our conversation in terms of sentiment analysis. But in terms of reinvention, one thing I want to talk about is for people to consider that reinvention is not change, it's actually transformation. And what you're doing when you're reinventing yourself is you are improving or altering what already is. Change is about improving or altering what already is, as in coming up with a better version of the old you. But transformation and reinvention is really about creating a whole new context for your life and a discontinuous shift in who you are, and the old you collapses away and a new you emerges out of that. And that requires a collapse of, one of the ways we can look at the world is that we have a narrative or a story about our past. And when we reinvent ourselves, we're collapsing that past and eliminating that past. And you can't reinvent yourself if you're clinging on to existing narratives. You have to fire hose away the old narratives and get rid of those limitations and the things that are holding you back, and then distinguish the new you, reinvent a new you out of that sort of nothingness that comes about.
Great, Charles. Well said. Catherine.
Well, Charles, I love that phrase, fire hose away, because it does take intention, right? And it's important to absolutely be intentional as to what you're eliminating, and also being aware and being intentional of what you're allowing in, which brings to mind the study of epigenetics and how our environment influences, how our body reacts, and our thoughts and what we do influences how our body reacts to our environment. And if we are in an environment that does not suit us, it does not do well for us all the way around. And so I think it's imperative to do that consistent evaluation and to be able to use the information that we have and say, okay, what do I want to do as far as my thought process, my actions, to move myself forward to actually be the person that I envision that I want to become. And on another little side note, I can't wait to see what the report card is for the sentiment analysis. And I want to just let you know what happened to me the other day. This is hysterical in regard to AI, because I woke up the other day and it was, the thought was, I really should write that book, because I'm being encouraged from several directions, to write that book. And I never looked anything up. And within about 10 minutes, I'm getting things on my phone and my computer for publishing companies and different AI platforms for writing books. And I'm like, well, this is hysterical.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. And it just kind of shares how much no one really knows what they don't know. And maybe they're working with an old blueprint.
And what we're broadcasting.
Being seen and heard all the time. So can't fight the trend.
It's kind of a cross between what we're putting out to the universe, Catherine, and what we're putting out to Alexa.
Right.
Always listening, and our computers are always listening. Whatever it is, there's something about the universe that's telling us, look, we're ready for change, and we have to be willing and ready to listen to it and go through the process. And what I find is so many people are resistant to the process that they are stagnant in their lives, and then they're frustrated and wonder where the change is going to come from. They expect it to come from without, when they have to have those, you said, Catherine, the intention, the focus, the perspective to say, I want to change for the better or for the different. And I keep going back in my mind to Tracy's comment from Bob Black, is being willing to look beyond what we have thought of as the norm in our lives. If we're open, we've talked about this in the past before, as being willing to travel. Charles, you're in Hong Kong and you've learned a lot about another culture, a different world over there. Mm-hmm. And getting beyond our map and what we think is normal allows us to transform ourselves and reinvent what we think is is our perspective on the world and our lives around us.
Yeah, great interpretation. And we've got Omar, who wants me to share his mug that he sent me in the mail with pictures of our visit to commemorate it. So I don't even use the cup, just for show. Charles has that comment. Welcome, and please tell us where you're watching or viewing. That is important to us. Okay, and then we move to Reinvention is not change, it's transformation. And Harvey Tuck is here, another favorite influencer. Great to be with my lovely friends, Don, Charles, Dave, and Catherine. Well, so nice to have you, Harvey. That's, what Omar proved, and Harvey and so many others, is that the connections you make can create reinvention opportunities for you, because everybody's on the same, let's say, track to get better. And with so many things changing, in the past, I believe reinvention was based on awareness, and knowledge. When I was in the hardware home improvement business, when you saw Home Depot starting to expand out of Atlanta, you knew it would just be a matter of time till they were in your town. But you could see them moving like an army, 1 year at a time, and you could get ready. Now things are happening instantly all over the world at once. And the awareness now comes into plugging into what's going on in the world. At the same time, you can uninvent yourself by plugging into the wrong information and the misinterpretation and representation that is probably changing people's lives for the worse, because it's changing their direction and their interpretation of their world around them. So this is so dynamic and layered that it makes it fascinating, but also opportunistic for those who can take the realm or the reins and move with it. So thanks, Harvey. Harvey's got his show on Tuesdays. I advocate a great show, great guy, great group of people. Really the envy of LinkedIn, in my opinion. Well, moving to Charles.
Yeah, thank you. I love what you've said about change, Donald, because change is a constant and it's inevitable. Change is inevitable, but progress is optional. And so you can progress, you're going to get change no matter what. Whether you progress through the change, that's going to be up to you. It's a choice that you make. But reinvention, I would say that reinvention is not an option, it's a necessity. You're either growing or you're dying, and stagnation is a form of slow death. Therefore, reinvention is something that you do only when you hit rock bottom, often is the case. But if people are able to, then what they should try to do is continuously process, leveling up and upgrading their life and their skills and their mindset to match their evolving desires and the changing world. And one of the things I say many times over is the importance of getting weekly time when you can actually sit down with your favorite beverage, favorite cup of tea or favorite coffee, and in the morning, not in the evening with a glass of wine, but in the morning, some quiet time and actually reflect on your goals. And that can help you. And how are you doing with your relationships? And that can actually help people with the process of reinvention, because they can make a conscious choice. This change is happening in the world. How am I going to respond to it? AI is a very, very good example. AI is coming. It's here, and people can have their head in the sand and be resisting it, or they can be embracing it. And it's the last month we've heard a lot of people say AI is not going to take people's jobs. humans that use AI will take the jobs of humans that do not use AI. So that's a conscious choice. And this is the importance of being able to, really get weekly time when you can monitor your life and reflect on your life and your progress and make a conscious choice to reinvent yourself and level
Yeah,
up.
those are just excellent points, Charles. Very appreciated. We've got Uzman here, who always comments on my daily newsletter. Thank you for being here. You're so kind. And then Harvey comes back with, every connection I've made on LinkedIn has created small reinventions. I think you need to be like an ocean, accept the currents and all the beautiful creatures who reside there. We are sailing on the ocean, it rarely stays the same. So poetic. I never even knew Harvey could put words together like that. So thank you, Harvey. And when you look at reinvention, it has so many layers. But let's move right into Catherine.
Well, I loved what you were talking about, Charles, in regard to reflecting on your goals and, doing that at least once a week. I think a morning practice is such an advantage for people that actually establish a morning practice for themselves, to have that time before they get connected to everything else that's around them. And I would add that reviewing goals, and also how are we each using our calendar, right? Because our time and our focus are such highly valued resources for us. And it's so easy to fritter away time, and we never get the time back. And I think that we need to keep that time a little precious for ourselves, to actually contribute to the reinvention that is required of us.
Yeah, well put. Dave? Your sound's not on.
Sorry about that. Putting my thoughts together here. I mean, change, I see so many people that are resistant to change. And I go back to a couple of things that my ex-wife would always tell me, is that there are early adopters to technology. The majority of us are somewhere in the middle, and then there's late adopters. And who's going to be the person at the forefront? And I think of what you and Charles are doing with AI, just incorporating it into today. But Don, you've been reinventing yourself and changing, metamorphosizing, if you will, a little bit as the show has gone on. It's not the same as it was 2-3 years ago. There's always some impact that's happened. You've integrated AI very adeptly into your network here to say, hey, this is how we can change and look at the show a better way and get more out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I appreciate the observation, and you're absolutely right. At a certain point, it's a matter of being practical and understanding it is what it is. What you have to say about it, especially if you're not that well informed, is limited. And if you're going to do it right and do it as best as you can. And then you find it as a friend because it's a tool and it works with you. And it's always there for you, and it costs you nothing, except for maybe a little fear here and there. But it builds your capacity of knowledge of what I can do with help. Where before it's like, what can I do? And it's usually, well, I'll get stronger, I'll get smarter, I'll get faster, I'll read better. And you can do that in addition to locking into AI. But, what will we do without electricity? And once we had that, it changed everything. And once we found another technology like the internet and the phone, and that changed everything. Now it's a matter of having a buffet of saying, which changes do you want to participate in? Not do you want to change? Because I think that Charles's earlier point, it's happening. It'll either change you or you can change with it, right? And I think one last thing before I move on to Charles is too many people blame something besides themselves. They say it's not fair, and usually they're lazy, to be honest. Usually They want things to happen to them and for them and not the other way around. And I think the reinvention also comes from, like Charles mentioned with the earlier ritual, self-reflection, right? Is take an inventory, just like we're doing at the end of the show with a scorecard. They actually say, how much more could I have done before I start blaming everybody else for everything else, right? Clear the deck first and then start thinking where you're missing. And after a while, whatever is. Okay, we've got Charles. Change is inevitable, progress is optional. Therefore, reinvention is not an option, it's a necessity. Harvey says, Charles, yes, I like what you said about AI. Someone said to me that AI, if used well, embraced as a tool, can be a superpower. And it's just early days of something we're yet to fully understand. It's a change, and people normally resist change except what you can't change and change what you can. We may be a boat on ocean, but we're in the front of the wheel. So true. And if you look at it like, this is great. I've been waiting for this all my life and it's finally here. Versus my life was going pretty well and I didn't need anything more to deal with. And I think it's conviction, and do you give up or do you go forward? So anyways, Charles.
Yeah, I like that, the conviction to go forward. Reinvention is not an act of, it's an act of creation, it's not a reaction. I might be repeating myself a bit here, but most people reinvent themselves reactively after a crisis. They go through a layoff or a relationship breakup or something that happens in their business life or their personal life that equates to a failure, and then they react to that, and as a result may or may not reinvent themselves. But true reinvention is proactive and generative. But that's why I think you need that practice of regularly reflecting on yourself. And out of that, you can declare a new possibility for yourself that's not based on reacting to something, but it's based on a choice that you're making in the future. And like you say, Don, it demands 100% responsibility, not pointing the finger and blaming circumstances or blaming other people, but you being cause in the matter for the reinvention that you want to make, as in people being a cause in the matter. And it's impossible to reinvent if you're going to place blame, or if you're going to be a martyr about a certain situation that you might be reacting to. But reinvention requires taking full responsibility, and not as a fault, but as something that you have the ability to respond to. So that's it's a creation process, and it's also not a doing process. So you need to reinvent yourself before you start doing things. Quite often people put the cart before the horse, and they start doing things without actually really sitting down and thinking, well, who am I in the matter? It's a little bit like organizations or corporations that start chasing product because the product will generate lots of revenue, but then they realize that they've actually gone way off vision and mission, because that revenue generator is not part of their core vision or core mission. And there's lots of examples of that in corporate life.
Well put. Catherine.
Well, it's continuing on the theme of, yes, we do create our own environment, our own experience. I'm working on a project now. It's called Flip Your Script, because your script becomes your blueprint. And the blueprint is always changing too, right? Just because you have a set blueprint for today, there's new information that you'll find tomorrow. And so it's going to require another little adjustment, right? Another little evaluation. Interestingly enough, my Apple account was hacked the other day. And that led me to, you can imagine how far reaching that goes when you have things in your Apple wallet and whatnot. And so I could have sat there and blamed and blah, blah, blah. I met so many fabulous people in Apple support, and all of these places. And what's beautiful about choosing your perspectives, choosing how you choose to look at something, it brought to light a hole in one of my systems that was set up. So now I'm set up much more effectively than I was had that not happened to me, right? Because it's something that somebody was going to get in there one way or another, right? And so better now, and then it's done, and now, okay, here we go. And so I have another little thing to think about, something to be aware of, and which I believe is a real gift.
Well, bravo, because you've now made us all feel better about getting taken advantage of. Knowing it happens, it's just your turn. And right, and it's an approach. I think that's so cool because again, it is what it is. How long you want to stick with it, the commentary you want to put around it doesn't change it, right? The faster you move on, the better. Dave.
Yeah.
I may be a little bit in the maybe let me just go with a little random thoughts here. Reinvention is one of two things or both in our lives at the same time. It can happen to us or it can happen intentionally. There are times where we don't even realize that we are changing because the environment around us has impacted us, and little changes over time that we don't even understand are happening. We've changed over time. But at the same time, as we've said many times through this conversation, there's an intention, I'm seeing things change and happen to me that I may or may I'm resistant to, so I force it to happen at times. So there's two things happening at the same time, or potentially at the same time, that we may not even know that we're changing. We may not see the changes until somebody says, you've become a butterfly and you didn't even realize it. And there's times where, wow, you've changed for the better. Yes, I took the intention and I made the decisions, the choices. So it's a dichotomy of forces in our lives that sometimes we're making the decision, sometimes it's forced, not even forced upon us, but happens around us that we don't even know it's happening.
Well put. I really appreciate that perspective. And Harvey comes back with, yes, I agree, Rand does not normally come from reaction. Also, people tend to go for the opposite of what they felt went wrong. The reality is it may only need a little nudge back on the right road. Reinvention is a constant and regular treat that tweaks to our path. Thanks, Harvey. We got you going. We're going to have you back on the show now. Too good. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, this conversation, because I kind of equate it to someone jumping out of a plane, right? And if they do that regularly, they know they're going to jump. The key is their parachute ready, So if everyday change is something you look forward to, you're excited by, how excited you used to be for mail. Couldn't wait to get to the mailbox to see what was in it or open a newspaper. Well, now it's transitioned from that into, knowing it's all over the place. Which transfer ticket do you want to take today? And how much better are you for reinvention tomorrow? So while you're reinventing yourself today, you're building a platform to continue that reinvention. So it's not like do it, hang out, do it some more when you need to. I think Harvey's earlier comment, you can outpace the pack if you leverage it properly. I've got a son-in-law who does just the most incredible things online. He's initiating AI 3.5 hours out of every 8-hour day. And his productivity is going up by 1,000%. Getting things done in 30 minutes used to take 3.5 hours, and it's better. Right? So at a certain point, you got to take the harness off yourself and put it on whatever it is that you're driving with. So it's the most exciting times and the scariest times, depending on what part of the side you're sitting on. Charles.
Yeah, I would agree with Harvey that but only if you're regularly reflecting on your reinvention. If you're regularly reflecting on who you are and regularly reflecting on leveling up, then yes, it's a nudge. Just like autopilot on a plane. You know, a plane is rarely 100% on course. It's always a little bit off course, and I don't know how often, probably every microsecond, the plane is making tweaks, those nudges to stay on course to the ultimate destination. But some people find themselves in a rut, and they're unconscious to where they're going and what's happening around them, and the change that might be happening in the world, or their existence and the lack of progress that they're making lives in what they don't know that they don't know. And in those situations, I don't think that change or reinvention is a nudge. I think then it's a massive decision, and it's a moment of decision where people need to get absolute clarity on where they're at on their own personal map and where they're going, and making a definitive choice that the old me is dead and this is who I am now. And that is a big decision. And procrastination is a massive issue for a lot of people. And that shows how much reinvention can be a massive decision. A lot of people are very, very invested in their past. You just look at the storage industry on the planet, actually, but especially in North America, Canada, and the United States. One of the biggest industries in the last couple of decades has been the storage industry. And that's because people are keeping, for all sorts of reasons, mostly sentimental when it actually comes down to it. A lot of people will say, well, it's of material value and someday I might sell it. But it's like having, the declutterers will say that when you're going through your closet, if you haven't used a clothing item in 2 years, you should get rid of it because you're not using it. And it's the same with life. We get stuck in these ruts, and I would say a rut is a grave with the ends knocked out. And then, everything lives in what we don't know that we don't know. And making that conscious choice is actually a massive decision. It's not a subtle nudge. It's a nudge if you're regularly leveling up, and if you're aware where you're going and you're clear on your goals and your aspirations. But if your life is living in what you don't know that you don't know, then it's a massive wake-up call. And unfortunately for a lot of people, the wake-up call is something that happens that they react to as opposed to proact to.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that context, Catherine.
I believe that the reflection is, pardon me, well served when we look at things from different perspectives. And so even in that morning practice, if you do it from a different location in your home or your office or wherever you do that, it actually prompts you a little bit to say, oh, okay, I can look at this a little differently, and what information do I gain from that? And I also believe that part of that evaluation process, and you're talking about sentimentality and keeping things, when we understand the neuroplasticity of the brain also, and that we have that ability to get out of the rut because we can create new neural pathways and to choose to think different things and be disciplined enough to impose some emotional regulation on ourselves, right? I believe that reduces the fear level, which then will eliminate some of the procrastination, because I think people they're in the rut, they're oblivious on some levels, but I believe with some people there's a fear of taking a step, of moving forward, and the thing that's also, I believe, imperative to keep in mind is that we're always going into the unknown. And so you can make up all sorts of stories as to what you're afraid of, and that's not even true. And so, I mean, there are predictions, and then there are, fabrications. And so it's fascinating when you start talking and thinking about all of these things, because there are many things to consider, and yet there is a simplicity to it as well.
Yeah, I love that. So well put together. Dave?
I don't know if there's enough background noise that you guys can actually hear me right now, but I want to build on that a little bit with the fear. Is one of the greatest emotions that we have is fear, and it drives so much of what we do that we lose focus of what is possible. And there's the old saying that depressives look too far in the background, in the past. Anxiety folks are looking in the future, and what they're doing is they're establishing a future that may or may never exist. And if we can get beyond that fear, then we drive focus in future that we want. And Catherine, you always go to the universe, and what we put out is what we get back, and how we interact with those around us. But if we exude fear and we give into it, then the fear will win, and we'll never reinvent ourselves. We'll never transform ourselves. We'll never grow. And the human situation is that we're never fully grown. We're never fully finished. We're never a complete project. So from the day we're conceived to the day we die, there's a change going on, and we have to accept that where we are now, whatever we're afraid of, is going to push us to grow to something better if we imagine it that way, and the universe will return it that way.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And, looking at it, to me, it has to encompass, kind of mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. All reinvention has to come from within you in order to flow out of you. Right? So when you don't do things, it's usually I'm not in the mood, right? I don't feel like it, or I don't have the energy, or let's do it tomorrow.
This is where discipline becomes a major factor.
Yeah, and knowing what makes you feel better, what brings you energy. So, I always look to diet, right, first. Then I look at exercise. Then I look at thought. And once you get the right attitude, that starts creating your new thoughts, which then starts driving your new actions. Mm-hmm. And you can take not only responsibility, but credit at that point. Like, I really got some sleep last night. I ate really well today, and I'm learning how to eat better, and I'm learning how to exercise better. And pretty soon that confidence starts to grow, and now you're building that force, as opposed to, do I go right or left? It's not as easy as that. Do I go up or down? Do I embrace AI? Do I embrace myself? Is the big question someone has to ask themselves. And how am I viewed by the people around me? Because a lot of times you'll make changes for other people that for yourself, it doesn't matter. I don't really care. It's tomato, or I don't see the big deal. But if everybody's screaming, we want to go to Wendy's, then you're going to Wendy's that day, right? I mean, just because everybody wants it, you want to make everybody happy. And as you make people happy, you get happier yourself. So you drive that by your sense of purpose. The other thing I'd like to add is we're playing a game that everybody knows the result, right? No one escapes. No one gets out of here alive. It's just a matter of how and when. Yeah. So during that time, you have nothing to lose, because ultimately it's going to disappear in the sense that you see it today. So it's like, give me another chance at that, right? How many people used to do something they love would love to do it again? Well, you can do it now while you can do it now, instead of regret. And I think the other question is, if I don't do it, what does it say to me? You start losing confidence. You start getting down on yourself. And I'd rather jump off a cliff and grow wings before I hit the ground, than I would sit back. One last thing I read is the people who come inside have a harder and harder time of going outside of their children, right? Because everything becomes dangerous. Everything becomes scary, and other things become comfortable and known. So it's really the embrace of what you don't know, knowing you will learn what it is, and give you better options and choices. Charles.
Yeah, we saw that in the pandemic as well, right? That the pandemic created so much fear with people that they all were driven inside. And in some places around the world, and Hong Kong definitely saw this, people were afraid to go back outside, literally. That was the case. But I love what you're saying about some of the things that people can do to shift things up, Don, and to actually start embracing change. And physiology is definitely one of them, you know, changing your body. If people are looking at, well, how can I do things different? How can I start to reinvent myself? Then you even changing your posture, being conscious of how you stand, smiling and moving. You know, motion creates emotion. And you can't feel empowered when you're slumped over or when you're breathing shallowly. You know, so even just breath work, uh, deep breathing, all these things can really make a big difference. The other thing is that attention goes, or energy goes where attention flows, or energy flows where attention goes. So focus is critical, and what you focus on becomes your reality. And are people, they can ask themselves, are they focusing on what's wrong? Are they focusing on fear? Are they focusing on blame or their circumstances? Or are they focusing on what they want, what they aspire to, how they want to level up, and the opportunity that is ahead of them, and being grateful for those opportunities? So where focus goes, energy flows. And also be conscious of language. Use growth mindset language. If you're using fixed mindset language, such as I can't, I'm trying, or I hope, or I want to one day, that's not going to help you, compared to that you committing and being convicted to getting things done. Start using language of certainty and power. I will, I am going to do something, I choose to do something. And if you do encounter failures or things that you don't get done, you just are not there yet. It doesn't mean you won't get there, you're just not there yet. Keep going.
Very inspirational. Thanks, Charles. Catherine?
Yeah, I'm all about the mindset. I think that it makes it's the deal, right? Because that old saying from Confucius from how many years ago, if you think you can, you can. If you think you cannot, you cannot. And a lot of people operate from one to the other. And I also believe that there are three magic little words, because some people, I think, want to talk to themselves in a way that is more affirming, is more the stronger mindset. They don't often recognize that I'm not there yet. However, they do say words, but if you don't have the emotion is the messenger. The emotion is what causes the energy to flow to what you focus on. And when you don't have that emotion, then you're not going anywhere. You're kind of dead in the water. You're not being it. You're not being the water. You're not flowing. You're just stagnant. And so there are three great little words. Up until now, I haven't done X, Y, or Z, and that's much more believable, right? And I think the other thing to keep in mind with the emotional intelligence, and I love that you said gratitude, Charles, because when we open up our hearts and when we are grateful for things, then that energy is much more in flow, and that's all part of the broadcasting, right? And so, and what's so interesting, I believe, that when you are grateful, when you are big-hearted, that influences your thoughts as well. And that's a beautiful, that heart-brain coherence is the real thing. It's all part of the broadcasting.
Excellent. Really appreciate it. And Dave?
Yeah, as we've been talking here, I've been thinking about reinvention in personal terms. And the struggle that I've had through this year is I've changed, I've moved cities, I haven't really let myself grow in the new environment that I am in. I've tiptoed around it, but it took my therapist a couple of weeks ago of saying, well, how do you get into the now? How do you get into the present moment? How do you think about where you are and what you're doing? Not worrying about what ifs, but what could be. The past is the past. I've acknowledged that is what it is. I can't change that. But there's a fear of the unknown in the future. But I can't worry about that if I'm not here ready right now to look at what it is I want to be and where it is I want to go. So about 2 weeks ago, I decided, Don, you'll appreciate this, I think. I said, look, my fitness isn't where it used to be. You know, I was training for the marathon. I just ran into struggles mentally, physically, emotionally. And I said, okay, stop. What is wrong? What's going on? Let's bring you back to the now. What needs to change? Well, my weight had gained, 10, 15 pounds. So I've lost 10 pounds here in the last couple of weeks. I've started to see the energy come back. I felt the mental clarity come back. So I've said, look, this is a reinvention of myself that I've said, look, what was working or what you were doing was not working. Let's get back to what it was working for you in the past to help you get into the future with a more positive mindset.
Well, that's wonderful. That's great to hear, Dave. And when I look at everything, if you know how you look at it affects how you enjoy it, because there's also success to reinvention, right? You finally got to where you wanted to go. Are you happy now? Did it please you? Was it the right thing? So, I look at things as the worst you can do is break even, because I give myself high marks on preparation, not always execution. But at least half of the solution is in place, and you got to fail your way to the top. It was the founder of IBM, Watson, who said, if you want to get real successful, double your rate of failure. Because if you look at it like, hey, I'm not going to hit a home run first bat, but I'm going to hold the bat, learn how to run. I'm going to maybe touch the ball. And that builds on the next step. And that's the joy, is not completion, but advancing through better, productivity. And, if you set the bar low, you can't lose, right? They say 90% of winning is just showing up for the game. Because if you show up enough, you're going to learn the game. You're going to learn from people around you, and then people are going to see you showing up, and they're going to want to support you more. So you got to do the thing in order to get the awareness, the attention from others, who will then create opportunities with you. Every day, me and Ann take an evening walk. Every afternoon, we do weights together, right? And it's so cool to be high-fiving after something you do every day. But it's a way of teaming up, right? And, a workout buddy will get you to go places you wouldn't have gone on your own, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, company makes any pain a lot less, right? Going into a tough situation with a good friend or a family member always makes it easier, because I think at the end of the day, context is everything. Gratitude is count all your blessings. Look at the positive side of your balance sheet, and then compare it against the thing that upsets you. And usually the thing that upsets you is compartmentalized into an area that's only 10% of your whole life. Why does that affect the 90% that's working great? And just being happy to be alive every day, get another ticket on the roller coaster of life. Who promised anybody anything? So I look at it like I'm already a winner. I'm in the game, right? Whatever happens in the game is going to happen with or without me. And one day the game's going to play and I won't, right? So there's a sense of scarcity into activity. And if you start getting successful on any level, it starts to give you confidence, like, hey, maybe I just need to put a little more thought into it, maybe a little more time, a little more patience, or even more importantly, a little more sense of humor. If you can laugh at about anything, nothing's going to bother you in time. So anyways, I know we're being recorded. That's trying to keep me down as far as my majority of time being spoken. I am trying to get an A in enthusiasm.
It's funny.
Yeah. So Dave, how many marathons have you
3.
already run? 3. Okay. So up until now, you have not yet run your
Right.
4th marathon. Yeah. So,
I
but
will.
you will,
No,
right? You will
The
run that
plan
4th
is to
marathon.
run, but I've got a plan
Absolutely.
for how to get there so that it's not a forced function of I have to. That the body and mind will be
Yeah, it's
ready
a
for
choice.
when it's time.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And one of the things I sometimes say is life is temporary, but ideas are permanent. And having been on many of these LinkedIn Lives with you, I know I have a lot of respect for your ideas. You have great ideas. And the other thing is, I have tremendous respect for people that have military experience, and particularly the military experience that you have, and for all the ups and downs that that brings. And I know that a lot of people who've been in the military often struggle with their experiences, but I really acknowledge you for your commitment in that area. And I think you have great ideas, and you should think, I would encourage you to find a way to tell those stories, and maybe write a book or
I
something like
have
that.
struggled with that concept, both the sharing the story in a public forum. I've written an essay on it, but speaking about it has been a little bit more troublesome. And writing a book has been, well, it's been on my mind. It's been hard to conceptualize or to put my words on paper to how to convey them.
But that's fantastic that that's on your heart, because that's
I
where it
appreciate
starts.
your words, Charles. I mean, I've appreciated the last few months where you've been on here and shared what you have. My experiences, I try to minimize my military experience because I know there's so many who did so much more. But after watching Taking Chance, a Kevin Bacon movie this week, I realized that no matter what we do in the military, we're where we were supposed to be when we did what we did. Whether it was the full-on
Absolutely.
combat or support, in some aspect, we did what we did and it had a purpose in the end.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of, when you're going forward into the future and reinventing yourself, you can't look back and say, I wish I could have. Although sometimes people say, if you were going to live your life over again, Charles, what would you do differently? I did have a period of time in my life when I was a young adult where one of my mentors encouraged me to go into what the equivalent of the Canadian National Guard, I think they call it the Canadian Reserves. And he even had the regiment identified, said that I should join the Queen's Own Rifles, even if it was only for a couple of years. And I don't have any regrets, but if I was going to live my life over again, I would have listened to him, and I would have done that, because I was running my own company at that point. And I think that I had some other friends that did something similar, and I have a lot of respect for people who have military experience, regardless of where in the military they've been. So, couple of comments here on, I guess, coming up to the closing comments on reinvention. One is that progress is often built by rituals. And lately, there's a lot of talk about the power of habits. And if people do want to reinvent themselves and they want to, those daily rituals, and the weekly ritual of reflection, I fully endorse that. But the daily rituals are like the daily action rituals. Those are the things that help us, like you, Dave, help us to move forward and accomplish that marathon when the body is ready, and help us to lose weight and things like that. And those daily positive habits become burned into our nervous system through consistent repetition. And the other thing is, coming back to the whole gratitude concept, is the power of contribution. And adding value to others is such a powerful tool to reinvent ourselves. And it just can't say enough about that. I remember when I was just after I had left Landmark and I was working in Hong Kong, one of the things, I was doing a lot of travel, business travel, and whenever I was in the US, quite often I would arrive a day or two early on a weekend in order to rest up from jet lag, because I might be going around the world to Hong Kong, India, then Chicago, Milwaukee, etc. And I remember I discovered that there was a Landmark Forum happening, and one of my previous mentors from Landmark Education was leading an evening session, and I went in and sat at the back of the room. There's about 200 people in the room. I sat at the back of the room, so I was really a nobody, but I wanted to be there because I knew that he had prostate cancer, and I wanted just to go in and check in with him and wish him well and let him know I was thinking about him and so on. And in the middle of this 200-person event, there's all these things happening. It's a busy night. And I wrote a little note and I said, can you send this up to the front and let Randy know that I'm here? And so they did. They delivered that note up to the forum leader. And people were in the middle of paired sharing. He looked up, he saw me, he came straight to the back and hugged me. And we had a couple of minutes where we were actually able to speak, which was really, really special. But he said something so powerful to me. He said to me, I said, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing great. I started a charity. He says, if you want to battle a monster like this, the best way to do it is to make a difference and make a contribution to other people. And he went out and he started a charity to raise money for cancer research in the middle of his own battle with cancer. That's contribution.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Catherine?
Oh, it's so fabulous. And that reminds me of that saying, be like the water. And the water doesn't wait for that rock to get out of the way, right? And so whatever you have your focus on, whether you're going to start that charity or you're going to just reach your hand out to your neighbor, it makes a huge difference because it changes your perspective and it changes your whole energetic output.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Dave?
Yeah, I appreciate everything that everybody said, as I always do, but I think a little bit more hit me a little harder today for some reason, not for some reason, for very obvious reasons. Thank you. I'm just going to end with a quote that I will admit that this has helped with AI. I used a bot for this one to help me, but I think it closes out my initial thoughts from talking about how metamorphosis and reinvention are interrelated. But reinvention isn't about rejecting who you were. It's about embracing who you are becoming. Like a metamorphosis, it's messy, it's often unseen, but it's how you grow wings.
Yep.
Yeah, wonderful quote. And what comes to mind is what's presently been in my mind is how we can go deep. And the deeper you can go, the more value you can find, right? The more things you can bring to the surface, express, share. Sharing is so important because you get confirmation and validation and support, right? The biggest thing people fear is rejection, right? When they get the opposite response, it promotes more sharing and more reality. Something that someone thought was awful, someone thought, well, under the conditions, I think it was great, right? And I think measuring and scoring is the job and responsibility you have for yourself. Why did you give yourself such a bad score, right? You were there, you played the game, you had everything going for you. And more importantly, where do we go from here? Not how many times you fall down, it's how fast you get up, right? You're going to fall down, you're going to get pushed down, and a lot of times it's not fair. And you can make the case, but who cares? The game still plays. You know what I mean? You get up, you start playing some more until you get knocked down. Then you get up even faster. And I think we have those things in mind. And one last piece that I always say for some reason last is the things that you allow to come into your mind during the day, the programming, the people who lift you up. One bad streak in business, for about a year and a half, I was against the wall. I didn't see the end of the tunnel. I mean, it was just every day. I put Think and Grow Rich, the little cassette, in my car. Mm-hmm. From the minute I left home to work, and from the minute I left work to home, for a year and a half, that's all I played. And you know what? I was a changed person when I got to work. Mm-hmm. And when I left work, I was a changed person when I came home. Why? Because it just put me in a different place. And, it was enough. It supported me. And I knew I needed that. Because if I didn't do it, I know I'd come in kind of grouchy, not too happy. And that affects all the people around you and everything you do. So last comment, Harvey Tuck says, great to be here today. Fantastic conversation. Huge value as always. Thank you and bravo to our incredible military personnel. And that's another last thing is when you have so many people who are supporting you, wishing you well, and they're in the background. You don't see them, you don't hear them, you don't even know they're thinking about you, but you know they are, and you know you made a difference in their lives, right? And sometimes if you only have one sandwich and two people, it's better to let the other person have the whole sandwich and enjoy it than give everybody half of what they deserve or need, right? And I think that's the key, putting yourself second. And to Charles' point, I love living vicariously through so many other people,
Yeah.
right? That their success, I feel so much better because I've done it, I've had it. It's valuable, but not as important, not as pivotal as other people, you know? And when you can live through others, you never have to reflect only on yourself, right? You're one of 20 maybe at that point. And I agree with Charles. I always tell everybody I'm wonderful. Why not? Right? Once you bring yourself down, you bring everybody with you. How do you get them back up? And you're only going to be there for a few minutes. Why not be the best that you can for the few minutes? So there's a little you can do, there's a lot you can do, but the key is doing something that makes you happier, moves you forward, and gives you conversation for wonderful content like we have today. So I want to thank everybody. We've got the scorecard to look at. I guess we'll do that after the show. And come back next week. We'll have another one.
We can also do it right now, and people can actually see the last minute. If you just throw it up there on the screen.
Where is it?
It should be backstage. If you throw it up, should.
Because there was a button I turned off.
Oh yeah, it's still backstage.
Okay, where's back?
So if you click backstage, wherever the rest of us would be hiding out when we first
okay,
joined.
I got it. Okay.
And then if you just put it on full screen, or actually that's good. We can see it there. So what this shows us, the middle column, it shows us the read score. And the read score is like an analysis by the AI of the overall positivity of the conversation, which is anything above 80 is positive. And so that's really good, a read score of 88. So when I'm using this tool in my coaching, I'm always shooting for something better than 80. In terms of the engagement, it's 88, which is not surprising because everyone's been speaking, and we're taking turns speaking, which gives the rest of us an opportunity to reflect on what we want to say next. So our engagement's super high. Usually the engagement's about 80%. This is at 88. And the sentiment is reading basically the positivity of our words. And interesting, Don, when you were sharing about listening to Think and Grow Rich and when you were up against the wall, it temporarily went down because I think you were sharing about a tough period in your business life. But then as we then immediately, when you were talking about, loving to live vicariously through other people, it shot right back up. So a sentiment score of 87 is really, really positive. It says here that Charles left. That's because I renamed the AI report at the very start. So the 14% represents the conversation you and I had, Don, before we got going. And the other thing it will say here is filler words. The filler words are using words like, oh, things like that. And you get a report afterwards, which will coach you about filler words and other ways that you can improve your speaking. But basically, this is it. And the other thing on the left-hand column, as the sentiment goes up and down, you'll get there you can see the filler words are 14% now after I said and things like that. And when the sentiment goes up or down, it'll flag it in the left-hand column with a red or a green. So really cool. I use this when I'm doing virtual coaching with my clients, and and then afterwards they get a whole report, and I share the report with them on the summary, the transcript, the coaching side of it, and the sentiment analysis and all
Yeah,
that.
this has been terrific, Charles. I sure appreciate you taking the initiative to bring this to the forefront. And it looks like I learned a lot from it. And I think everybody knowing they're on record kind of makes everybody a little bit more focused or want to hit the high scores. So can't thank you enough. And hopefully we can continue to incorporate this in future
Sure.
shows. So all for the good. And with that said, I'll end the stream first. So thank the audience and everybody here. And it's been a pleasure and look forward to coming back next week for another